Welcome to Tardisian Files.
Hello, listeners! For those of you who saw our social media post earlier, you'll probably have guessed that we have just watched the Interstellar Song Contest. And I will say, this episode made me weep before the ending made me scream. Without further ado, I am aching to get on with this review. To recap, the episode begins with a cryogenic suspended Rylan Clarke waking up in 2825 on the Harmony Arena space station. At the same time, the Doctor and Belinda, and Mrs. Flood, arrive to witness the 803rd Interstellar Song Contest. I wonder what that is a not-so-subtle reference to. The Doctor and Belinda nonchalantly steal the seats in a VIP booth, while the couple who were meant to be there are locked in the arena trying to gain access. On the arena's control gallery, however, all is not well. Two Hellians, Kid and Win, take control of the deck and set the broadcast to autoplay the rehearsal footage so that the audience of 3 trillion at home don't know what they're really up to. The Doctor, noticing Rylan's absence from the footage, realises what's going on. However, he triples the Mavity field, rightly anticipating what Kid does next. He sabotages the airfield over the arena, ejecting most of the audience and contestants out of the open roof into space, the Doctor and the TARDIS included. Belinda and a contestant named Cora and her agent from Tryon are saved from being thrown overboard as Wynne covertly locks the VIP booths to seal them backstage. And the couple from earlier, nurse and tech designer Mike and Gary, are still inside, albeit on the opposite end of the arena to Belinda. Out in space, the Doctor receives some sort of vision of his granddaughter Susan, who motivates him to propel himself back on board with a confetti cannon. And Mike and Gary see him opening an airlock for him to get back inside, where Mike revives him. On the other end of the arena, Cora comforts Belinda and her agent accesses the arena's systems the same time the Doctor does, and they discover Kid's ultimate plan is to use the station to broadcast a delta wave to fry the minds of all 3 trillion users, and blame it on the corporation. Cora tells Belinda that this is because the Hellians only got their bad reputation as the corporation lied to the rest of the galaxy, as they, in truth, bought Hellia and its inhabitants solely because they wanted the golden poppy that grew there for honey flavouring. And Cora knows this, as she is a dehorned Hellian who hid her heritage in order to sing. But in truth, she is the kin sister to Wynne, and knows both the young girl and Kid. The Doctor, on the other hand, doesn't have this information, and upon seeing Kid's intent to use a delta wave, he makes his way to the gallery and weaponises the hard light hologram systems to begin inflicting dreadful pain onto Kid until Cora and Belinda arrive to stop him, along with urges from his visions of Susan. With Kid's plan averted and the contestants kept in orbit of the station by the Mavity field, they're all brought back on board and revived one by one, allowing for a standalone performance by Cora, who sings a beautiful Hellian song, announcing her heritage to the galaxy and exposing the corporation's actions on Hellia, which is met with a standing ovation. After the show, the Doctor finds out from a holographic reconstruction of Graham Norton that Earth was destroyed in a single second on May 24th. Cause unknown. With the Vindicator all calibrated, he and Belinda finally arrive there, and something of immense power blasts the TARDIS doors off. Back at the arena, Mike and Gary revive the final ejectee from the contest, Mrs. Flood, who proceeds to bi-generate into Archie Panjabi, who reveals that they are none other than the Rani, and they are off to follow the Doctor. Let the battle begin. Okay, so this episode pulled at my heartstrings in more ways than one. So let's jump right into the pros. The first pro is the most obvious. The reveal that Mrs. Flood is indeed the Rani. Now, I will do a separate section for this bombshell reveal, but I will fully admit that I actually had to rewatch this part of the episode because I was screaming so much the first time around. Moving on to who I thought was the second most pivotal element of this episode, Cora. I absolutely loved Cora's character, and she may well go down in history as one of the best Doctor Who side characters. She was warm and kind, and her first instinct was to explain the situation to Belinda and calm her down when she saw that Belinda was panicking. And she continued to see the best in Kid and Wynne despite their actions, knowing that they were the actions of angry and abused children, not those of monsters. And when she sang that Hellian song, I very nearly cried. And I don't cry at Doctor Who often, but you can kind of hear it now. I'm actually kind of crying at the memory of it. It was that moving. Additionally, the setting of this episode was incredible. As someone who doesn't habitually watch Eurovision, I know, but just stay with me here. I was really keen to actually see the song contest unfold before Kid very rudely interrupted the show. And I, for one, am really hoping that there will be an official playlist of the Interstellar Song Contest released with the songs written for this episode, if there were more than just a few. Also, Rylan Clarke, someone give this man a knighthood. Seconds into the episode, he's woken up, teeth perfect, and poised to present. If there has ever been a single presenter from real life who is perfect to play a cryogenic reawoken version of themselves in this era of Doctor Who, it's Rylan. I do wonder how he survived the destruction of Earth in this timeline, but when he said, "Oh, not again while drifting in space," I have a feeling that he and possibly a few lucky survivors were thrown adrift in space and revived by aliens in 2025. That's a terrifying thought though. Humans in stasis, frozen and adrift in space. There's plenty of freaky trophy hunters in Doctor Who, and with the news that Earth has been destroyed, that would make preserved humans a collector's item. Moving swiftly on, this episode has a lot of little details from both the classic and revival eras of the show, such as Cora representing Tryon, which long-time fans of the show will know is where the 5th Doctor's companion Vizsla Turlough was from, and Kid's use of a delta wave, which was the 9th Doctor's plan on Satellite 5 in 200,100 AD to use against the New Dalek Empire. That is, a wave that fries the brain cells of anyone close by, something he refused to use in the end as it would wipe out the Earth too. Though they were ultimately small nods to previous eras of the show and didn't appear to have any overarching hints to future plot lines of the series finale, it was still nice for longtime fans of the show to see these tiny little details written into the show, if nothing else as a subtle nod to the show's past. Another thing that I actually really enjoyed about this episode was its villains, Kid and Wynne. Now, I don't condone what Kid planned to do, and I will also admit that I almost cried a little bit when he ejected everyone from the station, but his backstory did the opposite of putting ice in my heart. It made me feel a lot of sympathy. He even said it himself, if you treat a child like a monster, they will grow up and act like one. He and Wynne had more reason than most to be angry and vengeful, and while he was wrong to try and do what he did, his anger towards the corporation was justified. I think I speak for most when I say, if we grew up like that, we'd probably want revenge too. And that was a very wholesome, sympathetic villain, I thought. Finally, there's the other Time Lady of this episode, Susan Foreman. Not just any Susan, but the original actress, Carol Ann Ford herself. I don't know what this could mean, if it really was just a memory, or if Susan really is coming back, but dear Ms. Ford, if you are listening, welcome back to Doctor Who. We've missed you. Moving on to the cons, there was only really one true con that I had with this episode, and it was the Doctor's anger. Now, I know that his reason was that Kid's plan reminded him of Gallifrey, probably the same way his own plan using a delta wave in his 9th incarnation did, and while it was a reality check for us as the audience to see the Doctor's dark side, something rarely seen yet in this incarnation, I'm just going to say it, badly done, Doctor. Kid is a child compared to the Doctor. His name literally is child. Probably barely old enough to be called an adult, Cora still saw that child. The Doctor, for all his compassion and wisdom, did not. And while there are those of us who may well have understood his anger, I thought the Doctor let his emotions get in the way of his better judgment, and it was very shameful indeed. He was not the beacon of wisdom and compassion in this episode, Cora was. A woman a fraction of his age and experience, and yet she turned the tide on the corporation and got the galaxy to realise that they were lying about the Hellians. The Doctor could stand to learn a few things from her example, I think. Now, that brings us to the Rani. So, who is the Rani? I could do a whole episode on this, and I intend to do just that when our review of this season finishes, but to save time, here's the gist. The Rani, previously named Ushus, was the Master and the Doctor's classmate on Gallifrey at the Academy. While the two boys played around with gadgets and had ideas of grandeur, the Rani was far more reserved, but still an ambitious scientist. As she grew up, she became indifferent towards lower life forms, leading her to accidentally breed monster rats, who ate the Lord President's cat and apparently took a chunk out of him as well. This led to her banishment, but after hijacking and taking ownership of the TARDIS escorting her to her confinement, she escaped into the universe with one goal in mind: explore and experiment. She's met the Doctor's 6th and 7th incarnations several times on screen and in the audios, and ultimately her goal in every episode relates back to a previous incident on the planet Myasimiya Goria, which she enslaved the population to by lowering their ability to sleep, but it made them too aggressive to control. The Doctor finally fixed the issue for her in Planet of the Rani, but the Myasimiya Gorians rose up and usurped her, leading her to be imprisoned. And that was the last we heard of her. Until now. I will fully admit that I screamed and jumped and cheered at the revelation in this episode. For those who've been listening for a while now, you know that I have been entertaining the possibility that Mrs. Flood was the Rani since Season 1 came out last year. However, you'll also know that I was always hesitant to put all my eggs in one basket with that theory, as the rights to use the Rani did not used to be in the hands of the BBC, but in the hands of the couple who created her, Jane and Pip Baker, who sadly passed away in 2014 and 2020 respectively, after a series of Big Finish audio stories featuring the Rani, voiced by Siobhan Redmond, in 2015 finished. As the pair didn't have any descendants, it was unclear who the rights to use the Rani went to, and I personally couldn't find any public records to indicate where the rights ended up after 2020. Now, the 10th Doctor previously stated he believed that the Rani was dead, and when Stephen Moffat took over as showrunner in 2012, he had an interview where he said that he had no intention of bringing her back, which stifled rumours for the last decade or so. However, there have been a few subtle hints to the Rani's return. The first being a deleted scene from The Giggle, where Mel, the last companion to have met the Rani, mentioned her to the 14th Doctor. The hand that took the Master's gold tooth was reminiscent of the hand that took the Saxon's ring, which RTD jokingly referred to in the media at the time as the hand of the Rani, and these, a bit more speculative but still, Mrs. Flood introducing herself as the governor to Conrad in Lucky Day, as the second Rani, voiced by Siobhan Redmond, was imprisoned and later became the governor of the Tekuaria Penitentiary in the audio Planet of the Rani. And then finally, there's Mrs. Flood's name. Mrs. Flood. A flood comes from the rain. What is rain? It's an anagram of Rani. All of these little details subtly hinted to Mrs. Flood's true identity, and I even said it in our review of The Well, she really was emulating the Rani. As for Archie Panjabi, who I will admit I have only seen on TV before as Naz Kamal in Blind Spot a few years ago, I think she was perfectly cast for the Rani. In a conversation with a good friend of mine who told me several weeks prior to this episode that she had been cast for Doctor Who, He and I did sit down and text for ages, wondering who Archie would be playing, and I offered to reface the original Rani incarnation, played by the wonderful Case O'Hara, with Archie's face in a slightly far-reaching pseudo-scientific attempt to see if he and I got any Rani vibes from her, which is where that lovely AI portrait on our social media pages came from. And I will say it, the minute I saw the portrait, I could see Archie playing the Rani. And from the few moments of screen time that she's had in this episode, it is very obvious to me that she is still the no-nonsense, troublemaking scientist that she was all the way back in 1985's Mark of the Rani. Ms. Punjabi, welcome to Doctor Who. We're very lucky to have you. And that brings us to the end of our review. I personally loved this episode. It was a bittersweet joy to watch, and the revelation at the end was an earth-shattering thrill. What did you think of this episode? Let us know in the comments of your favourite streaming app, or in the comments section for our social media posts for this episode on Instagram and TikTok at Tardessian Files Podcasts. We also have a Blue Sky account now under the handle at tardessianfiles.bsky.social, where we will not only be posting about new episodes, but we'll also be using it to engage with our lovely viewers to hear more of your ideas and feedback. Please leave a like and subscribe, and as always, see you next time on Tardessian Files.